The original building was built in the 1860s, and throughout the years they just added on. I think 1902 or 03 was the last year they added on to this. At one point there were, I think, 20-some buildings. There's a nice, is that called a schematic? I don't know. That will show the different buildings of its day. They're not all there now. But anyway, at one time, Racine Wagon and Carriage Company, who was the original owner of this building, were putting out 50,000 rigs a year. And in their heyday, they were employing 900 people. All the different buildings, they would have painting, repair, doing the upholstery, the leather work, building the wheels, you name it. It was a all in-house, one-stop shop place, everything. Unfortunately, well, we'll get to that. In 1903, they merged with the Satley Manufacturing Company, which was an farm implement manufacturing company in Springfield, Illinois, and they became the Racine Satley Company. It was the first time that an implement company merged with a wagon company. So there's a little Racine trivia.
Who was Satley then? Do you have any idea who?
There were two brothers, the Satley brothers. I forget their names, but they had the farm implement, and the headquarters remained in Springfield, but the factory remained here. But they had stores all around the country, Chicago being one of them, and I put that picture up on Facebook or on our website, I guess, either one. I think our Facebook page. And then there was one in Denver. I forget the other places, but we had them all around.
So and do a little less than 1,000 a week building.
Are you asking me to do math?
No, I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm just doing sketchy math in my head. 1,000 a week, it's like 200 a day.
Well, yeah, they were cranking them out. Yeah, 50,000 a year of wagons, carriages, vans. Let's see, what are some of them? Surreys, express and delivery wagons, laundry wagons, moving vans. They were cranking them out, going through these hallways. The railway came right up here, and if you can see, looking out the window, or if you could see some of the old pictures, you can see the tracks coming right up to the building. You can see on that schematic too, I think. But they load them right onto the trains and take them to other parts. But if you think about it, Racine was a really central location for what was happening with the expansion going out west. And I mean, I know for a fact that Bozeman, Montana, in the museum out at Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman, has a Racine Wagon and carriage in there. I'm trying to get them to send me a picture. In 1914, if you really hadn't embraced the automobile as a wagon company, it was looking kind of dire. And I don't know why. I haven't been able to dig up that history. They didn't embrace automobile manufacturing. But they did reorganize, and they became the Racine Carriage Company. Satley was bought by Montgomery Ward, I believe, and so that became a whole different thing. And this became just Racine Carriage Company. But what they did, because they shrunk so much, they were kind of going bankrupt, they opened their doors because they had this huge complex. I mean, it was almost 600,000 square feet. They had all this space. they had other entrepreneurs move in with their companies and start renting space from them. That was in 1914. By 1916, they changed the name to Racine Industrial Plant and became the first business incubator in the country. And right now, business incubation is kind of a hot word, you know, and here we are, the first one, right here in Racine, officially in 1916. At the time, in 1914, we had Wisconsin Electric Company, LPC Motor, so another company was manufacturing cars. It just was not Racine Wagon and Carriage Company, were not. Webster Electric was here, Racine Auto Parts. What Racine Carriage Company did do was open a repair department and a retrimming, painting for automobiles, but they weren't manufacturing them. In 1916, and along the wall here, I have compiled what I can find from city directories going up to 1955, what companies were here at what year. And so if you want to look for businesses that you know, or I have a lot of people come whose fathers had a business here, or an uncle, or they worked here, or what. Does anyone have that history background in this group? You worked here?
I worked here. This is the Ritz manufacturer.
So you worked for Ritz. So do you remember Jim Mercier? He was a kid and worked here. And I should mention that now, that if it weren't for Jim Mercier, who is a Racine memorabilia collector, I don't know if anybody here knows him, he has a phenomenal collection of Racine memorabilia. And I met him at a Preservation Racine, their group came and I gave a presentation to them, and he had a bunch of Racine Wagon and Carriage Company items over here that he brought to show me. And in the course of our conversation, he said, well, you know, Emily, I have a wagon that was made, or a carriage, I have a carriage that was made in your building in my garage. If you ever wanted to display it, you may, which, there it is. So as we got to know each other, he said, well, you know, I also have a sleigh that was made, and that's in my mother's garage. So these are the first two items that he allowed us to display. And as I was compiling the lists, I would send him emails of companies that were here, and he would go into his basement and handpick items from his collection. And he really has put this together. Now that the word is getting out, people are making little donations, or they might have things, or he's finding things on eBay. The horses over here were by Deluxe Craft, who are the ones that were responsible for the big fire in the 60s.
Oh, really?
So the trunks are Weary Trunk. Anybody from Racine would know the Weary lights at Christmas, right? But anyway, back to 1916, we had Ajax Auto Parts. They were eventually bought out by Walker Manufacturing. Wallace Tractor was here, which is part of the case. I don't know in what capacity they were here, because looking in the city directories, they don't always say. They could have just been storage. I don't know if anything was manufactured here or what, but they were listed as being here. Racine Candy Shop, Racine Barrel and Cooperage. Even back then, there was such a wide variety of different entrepreneurs and industries that were happening here. Our big claim to fame is Modine. He started his company in 1916, and I know by 1918 he was in this building, and they were renting about 10,000 square feet. So they were a huge tenant here, and they incubated, they grew and grew, and then bought the place next door, or bought the lot next door, and built their big wind tunnel and their international factory, which is just the perfect example that I can, look out the window and there is something that was incubated right here, and they're an international, wonderful company. So that's our big claim to fame. Racine Boiler and Tank was here back then too. They're now Metal World right up the street. I have some of their items. Then in the 1930s, there was a fellow by the name of H.D. Wrench who was he worked at Hamilton and Beach, and but he rented space here because he liked to tinker and do things, and he had his own little company called the Ideal Tub Company, and they built or they put together whatever folding rubber bathtubs and things. There's a picture over there. It's my dad and my uncle are the little guys in there. So, and then he also had wrench manufacturing in here. He and a partner were working at Hamilton Beach, and they, but on the side, were renting here, doing floor cleaning. And my grandfather did a dry, more of a powdery thing that turned into Host, and Fran von Trotter did more of the dry foam. So they had separate businesses but shared some space. Well, they ended up buying this building in 1944 to ensure that other entrepreneurs would have affordable and have access to space to pursue their dreams. In the 1990s, the building went through some renovations and renamed itself Racine Business Center to better reflect, Racine Industrial Plant, and kind of moving away from the industrial plant kind of vibe and being more business oriented. So it just better reflected the industry that was being conducted within. And then in the 1990s, artists started discovering the space. It was, the post and beam, the exposed brick. Of course, in here it's painted brick, but the big windows for light. And word got out, and we have quite an active artist community here. This is a piece done by one of our artists, Sally. So I don't know if any of you come in December. They have a big open house the first Saturday of December. It's really fun. They open their studios. It's like a big party. Bob, have you come? It is fun. We get about 500 people coming through the building that day. They have wine and cheese, and people are pulling up their... So that has been really exciting for me to see that whole community grow and be so vibrant, because when you bring artists in, it just brings a whole different energy, and we really can feel that, and it's just very cool to me to have these entrepreneurs coming and the artists coming, and just this building keeps on ticking and going. And anyway, so that's us. Oh, okay, my favorite story, how could I forget? Back to Hamilton and Beach. So everybody in Racine knows Hamilton Beach, right? I mean, we have the blenders and the whatever. Well, what I didn't know until I started digging into the history was Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Beach, L.H. Hamilton and Chester Beach, left Hamilton Beach. The owner, they weren't the owners per se of Hamilton Beach, but the owner used their names, paid them to use their names Because he had a really weird name, and I can't even pronounce it. I think it starts with an O. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So he paid them to use their name. Apparently, he wasn't very scrupulous. So they left. They came to this building, and they started Wisconsin Electric Company. So Hamilton Beach, the real Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Beach, were actually here with Wisconsin Electric Company. One of their lines was Do More. And eventually, Wisconsin Electric turned into Do More. They were here for a long time. They moved down the street a bit. You can still see the name Do More on one of the, thank you. And then they moved to Boston, where they are today. And I contacted them, and somebody sent me this huge Xerox document of all their history. And so anyway, so I love that story that they left, and we had Hamilton and Beach right here, but who knew? I didn't. Can't think of any other little tidbits. Did anybody have one of these when they were little? Because I did. I had one just like this. Oh my gosh, the memories on this thing for hours.
Yeah, we did. My grandparents did.
The owner's son, Herb Zimmer, the owner's son, found out, and I forget how, that we had this going, the exhibit, and contacted Jim Mercier and told him he had this restored horse, gliding horse, and brought it over. This is on loan, which is coming up pretty soon, that I won't have it anymore. But Jim has been able to track down these other two, so those are permanent loan. They won't leave. But yeah, I've got the fire picture over on the desk over there. But in the 1960s, I think it was 1964, a hose broke loose or something that was spewing oil. Yeah. And these horses, and he made other items too, but I only knew them as from the horses, were made of sawdust. He got sawdust, pressed it together in these molds, and created these wonderful toys. And of course, sawdust, oil, flammable, boom, big fire. They recovered a little bit, but they didn't come back to the building. They moved down the street after that. So, but yeah, I feel very fortunate to have those, especially that one, because that just brings me right back to my childhood. Mm-hmm. Since we're all about memories here, right? Mm-hmm. And they made machines that made candy. And they hold the patent on the machine that puts the crook in candy canes. Oh. So before that, that was all, if you had a peppermint with a crook, that was done by hand. They hold the patent. Now, everybody knows Bob's candy canes. I buy Bob's at Christmas. But I did my research, and the gentleman who invented it, who worked for the Racine Confectionery Machinery Company, holds the patent sooner than the guy who worked for Bob. Bob's is just more famous. They also hold a patent for the machine that put the little stick in a lozenge and created the lollipop. Right here in Racine. See?